Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining today's webinar. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to those of you watching all over the world, quite literally today. We've got almost 200 of you that have signed up to this webinar, so it's a really fantastic number. Great to see so much enthusiasm for this topic and for what we'd like to share with you today. We want this conversation to be as interactive as possible. So if you are so inclined, if you could just say hello in the chat and maybe just let us know where you're watching in from. It's always nice to kind of feel a bit closer and more connected in this virtual world. Just to introduce myself, some of you I know quite well, and so to those of you that don't, my name is Ben Sukia. I'm a client success manager here at Centuro Global. So before we get started, just a little bit about who we are at Centuro. We really are here and exist to take the hassle out of managing a global workforce. If you are an HR professional watching this, and I know what it's like, I know the challenges of working in this industry very well. It involves navigating a myriad of pieces, most importantly, obviously, compliance. And that's what makes global mobility such a complex challenge. And that's where our unique blend of AI technology and human expertise, because we all know this is people-centric industry, comes in to support our clients as much as possible. Quick word on our technology and the importance of AI. I'm sure you're hearing it everywhere in the news and in your day-to-day jobs, but we do have an AI-powered platform that streamlines your entire workflow. It cuts admin time in half, and we have evidence that proves it can reduce costs by up to 35%. So working with our platform and our dedicated team of immigration specialists, one of whom will be speaking today, we like to ensure that every immigration, tax, or HR compliance detail is handled as seamlessly as possible on one single platform. So a bit about today. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to be guiding you through everything you need to know about one of the topics of the year, the topics of the month. It's recently come into effect in the UK for a number of countries, and that is a new ETA scheme. So if you stay with us and join us for the best part of the next hour, we're going to try and break down the key details, requirements, and what it's likely to mean for you and your business as well. So without further ado, really excited to introduce one of our team members. As I say, we have a fantastic team of immigration specialists here at Centuro. We offer excellent services as well as our platform. And today I'm joined by my colleague, Sam Kens. Sam, hello, how are you?
Hi, everyone. Great to be here.
Great, thanks, Sam. Sam is one of our in-house UK immigration experts. Sam, over to you. Do you want to give a brief introduction?
Yeah, thank you, Ben. And like I say, pleasure to be here today, speaking in front of all you guys. Some of you who have signed up, I believe I've encountered before, met before, but for those who I haven't, it's great to be connected today. My role at Centuro is a client services executive, so I sort of specialise and solely focus on UK inbound immigration. That could be anything from work-based migration, study-based migration, all the way down to sort of visitor visas, and of course the topic of discussion today, which is the sort of newly introduced Electronic Travel Authorisation scheme.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate it.
Perfect.
Before we dive into this topic, our star behind the screen, Nicole, has asked me to give some quick housekeeping points. So before we get started, a few points to note. This session is being recorded. So if anyone misses anything or they're not able to join the session at all and wants to revisit some of the points, a recording will be shared with you afterwards. As I mentioned at the top, we really want people to participate. Please do jump in the chat. Any questions or comments, thoughts or ideas, please just drop them in the comment section. During the webinar, we will address any questions during the Q&A session at the end, as always. If we don't get a chance to follow up, then to respond during the webinar, then we will obviously follow up with you later directly. If anyone does have any gremlins or tech issues, audio issues, and that sort of thing, then first thing we'd suggest is try to refresh your page. If the issue persists, then we have a support team in the background, and just send them a message and they'll be able to help you as much as they're able to. Again, any thoughts or takeaways you have, we are really active on social media even. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram. So all you need to do is just tag us at Centura Global, and we'll really be excited to engage with your posts and respond and see if there's any ideas that we can maybe even come up with together. But without further ado, I think you're all here to find out more about the UK's ETA scheme. And I'm going to bring Sam back onto the screen, and we've got some slides to kind of go through some of the information. Some of it's quite technical. But Sam, over to you, and maybe you could start by just giving us an introduction as to what this ETA scheme is all about.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. And like I say, welcome everyone to this presentation today. So just a little bit about sort of what the Electronic Travel Authorisation, or ETA scheme, is about. It's essentially a way for the UK Home Office, in their own words, to try and sort of track and monitor individuals who are currently non-visa nationals. So these could be European nationals, they could be US nationals, Australian, New Zealand, for example. It's a way to sort of identify and do a background check on these individuals before they enter the UK for short-term stays. So again, these short-term stays could be for tourism purposes, they could be for short-term study purposes, etc. So just a little bit about what this scheme is. So it's basically a new digital system introduced by the Home Office to, in their own words, enhance border security and facilitate smoother entry for travellers visiting the UK. Now, I just want to sort of make it clear from the get-go that the ETA scheme will only affect those individuals who are currently non-visa nationals. So these, like I said before, are individuals who could be a national of a European Union country, the US, most South American countries, Japan, etc. It will not affect individuals, or will not be applicable, sorry, to individuals who are visa nationals. So Indian nationals, Libyan nationals, any other nationalities on that list. So as we said here, it will require these non-visa nationals to obtain an ETA to enter the UK for any short-term visits. So these could be like short-term study, Tier 5 creative reasons, tourism, etc. The ETA in itself is a document which is electronically linked to the traveller's passport, and it can be applied for either online or via a mobile app. It is obviously mandatory for these short-term visits for these sort of aforementioned purposes, and the authorization will ensure that travelers to the UK meet the necessary entry requirements, and it is also a way for the UK government to conduct security and identity checks on an individual in advance of any UK travel. Once it's been granted, the ETA is typically valid for multiple trips over a specified period. And the scheme, which I'm sure many of you are aware, which began rolling out in November of 2023, is set to fully launch by April 2025. Now, the scheme in itself has been rolled out in phases. The first phase came out in November 2023 and was applicable to several nationalities in the Middle East, which Ben will cover later in this presentation. There was a phase 2, which has just happened. That was from November of 2024 to January of 2025. And that was sort of rolled the scheme out to every other non-visa nationality, aside from those in the European Union, European Economic Area, or Switzerland. But that is planned for March to April of 2025, so only a few months away. The ETA scheme, it's sort of a way that the UK has tried to align themselves with other countries, such as the US with its ETA scheme, and Canada, Australia, New Zealand with their own ETA schemes as well. But again, my colleague Ben will go into more detail on that in a short while. So we just move to the next slide. We've got a little bit more sort of intricate details about the ETA in itself. So the ETA will be valid for 2 years, or until an individual's passport expires. Now, this will be whichever date is sooner of the two. So if you get an ETA, but your passport expires in 1 year's time, as soon as you get a new passport, you will need to reapply for another ETA on that new passport. It is not linked to the individual, it is linked to the passport. However, this also applies on the converse. If the passport is valid for another, let's say 9 years, and it's been 2 years since you got an ETA, you will need to sort of reapply for another ETA after that time. Now, the application process is not that complicated. It is quite similar to how you would apply for a US ESTA, for example. It's an online application form that can be done either on a laptop, tablet, computer, or probably most commonly on a mobile phone. And it will cost at the moment £10. However, as you may have seen, the UK government are planning to increase this amount to £16, but this will need to attain parliamentary approval. Now, we haven't got that parliamentary approval yet. I know the UK government are very keen to get that £16 increase approved, but of course we will need to wait until Parliament approves that before it can be implemented. If the application is successful, then the ETA will be granted and it will be linked to that individual's passport. And the Home Office, again in their own words, have sort of stated that the increased use of this automation will speed up UK clearance at the border and improve overall passenger experience. Now, my colleague Ben is just going to give a quick overview of other schemes worldwide that this ETA can sort of be linked to.
Thanks very much, Sam. Just give you a minute to catch your breath and have a sip of water. As Sam has said, this isn't the first electronic authorization that's been introduced by any country. In fact, a number of countries have already been implementing a similar type of scheme for several years now. The most common one that some of you are quite likely to be familiar with is obviously the ESTA. It's quite a straightforward application. You go online to dhs.gov.us. I don't have the full website, but it's quite a straightforward application form that you would share online. Other countries also, ETA exists in New Zealand and Canada and Australia. Again, they're all quite straightforward applications that you would go onto the authorities' website to complete. Usually the turnaround time, they state that it can be 2 to 3 days. It can be completed within a couple of hours if you are lucky, although we do advise to apply with a few days' notice, just in case there are any kind of delays or issues in terms of the approval. The one big one that's coming is the ETIAS, which we will cover perhaps in some of the questions. I know a lot of people have been asking. That is likely to be implemented midway through this year. And it has been kind of announced since 2020, so there have been several delays in fact with the ETIAS. We are expecting it to be rolled out in a phased manner midway through this year, but there are a number of countries that already have an electronic travel authorization that is in place, so the UK is reciprocating that by introducing their own. So Sam, I'll pass it back to you.
Perfect, thank you, Ben. So again, just a little bit here about who actually needs to attain an ETA, just to clear up any potential confusion that may be out there. So individuals travelling to the UK, except British and Irish citizens, must now seek permission to travel in advance. And the type of permission they require will depend on the individual's own circumstances. So we can see here we've got 3 different boxes down here. We've got 2 where there's no change, nothing is happening, and then another one where the ETA will be applicable. So first of all, British and Irish citizens do not currently need an ETA to travel to the UK, and this remains the same. The passport of the British or Irish citizen will remain evidence of their permission if travelling from outside the common travel area. In addition to this, those already granted permission to enter or remain in the UK do not need an ETA to travel to the UK. So, for example, if you have a UK skilled worker visa, a UK visitor visa, or any other type of visa or permission for the UK, you will not need an ETA in addition to that to travel to the UK. Your UK visa status is sufficient enough to re-enter the UK. However, those who do not currently need a visa or entry clearance must now apply for and obtain an ETA before they can travel to the UK. And again, as previously stated, the ETA will be linked to the passport used to apply for it. It is not linked to the individual, but their passport. So if the passport runs out, you must obtain another ETA. You renounce that citizenship and obtain another citizenship and get a new passport of that new nationality. If applicable, you must obtain an ETA. So just a final piece about this, the passenger information on the application form will be submitted to the Home Office, who in response will confirm whether the individual has a permission to travel to the UK. So it's not like you apply for an ETA and it's a guarantee you'll get it. There is still that application process where the Home Office will make a decision on whether to grant your ETA or reject it. We've got a little bit more on this section. So again, individuals who do require an ETA, these are people who are coming to the UK who don't currently need a visa for short stays. They will now require an ETA. So people coming for tourism, family and friend reasons, any business travel, study as a visitor, short-term study as a visitor, attending events, etc. Any infants and children, these individuals will also require an ETA. Unfortunately, there is no age limitation on this. Every individual will require an ETA if applicable, no matter the age. Anyone who is transiting through the UK. Now, I know there are a few questions about this, and this will be covered later in the presentation, but anyone who transits through the UK will currently need an ETA. However, there is an exception for this now, but we will cover that at the end of the presentation. Anyone coming to the UK for Tier 5 creative visa reasons, and also now any European Economic Area and Swiss nationals. The people who don't need an ETA, so these are people who still require a visa to come to the UK. So anyone on the visa national list. So anyone with permission to live, work or study in the UK, any British or Irish passport holders, anyone who's a dual national. So as an example, if you were a dual British and Italian national, you wouldn't need an ETA because you could travel back on your British passport. Similarly, if you were a dual Irish and let's say US national, you wouldn't need an ETA because you just travel back on your Irish passport. Any individuals who are exempt from immigration control, UK immigration control, and anyone who is a British Overseas Territories citizen. So just a little bit now about the Common Travel Area. So the Common Travel Area, as I'm sure many of you are aware, is a long-standing political arrangement between the UK, the Crown Dependencies, and Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, that allows British and Irish citizens to move freely and reside in either jurisdiction. The government has recently announced that it remains committed to the Common Travel Area and that British and Irish citizens will continue to not need an ETA to move between jurisdictions. The UK does not currently operate routine immigration controls on journeys from within the CTA. So there are no controls on the Northern Ireland border at present. I know that's been a point of continuous political tension since Brexit, but still that remains. There are no border controls or immigration controls on the Northern Ireland border at present. Whether that will change in the future, we don't know, but that will be something to keep an eye on. This is where it gets a little bit complicated and where there needs to be a distinction needs to be made. So anyone who is a non-Irish resident of Ireland from a nationality that does not usually need a visa to visit the UK, for example, European Union and US nationals, they will not need an ETA when travelling from within the Common Travel Area, provided they hold acceptable evidence of their Irish resident status. So if you were a US national, for example, living in Dublin, you had an Irish residency permit, and you wanted to travel, let's say, to Belfast across the Northern Irish border, what you would need when you travel through that border is you would need your Irish passport and just acceptable proof of your Irish resident status. You wouldn't need an ETA because you are residing in Ireland and you have residency in Ireland or legal residency in Ireland. However, non-Irish residents of Ireland who are travelling to the UK from outside the Common Travel Area will still need an ETA before they travel. So if we take the same situation, you're a US national who has Irish residency, but you're back in the US visiting family and you're travelling directly from the US to London, let's say London, before you travel back to Ireland. For that trip to London, you will need an electronic travel authorization permit. And the reason being is that because you're not traveling directly from Ireland to the UK, you're traveling from another country, the US, into the UK. It doesn't matter if you hold an Irish visa, Irish residency, because you're not traveling directly from Ireland to the UK, you must obtain an ETA before you travel. So Ben's just going to cover a little bit here about the rollout we've had and the sort of phases that it's been rolled out in. So back over to you, Ben.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks very much. So this slide and the following slide sets out the countries and the nationalities of these individuals who will or who have had to apply for an ETA, who now have to apply, and the following slide will set out the nationalities who will need to do so later in the year. So as you can see, this is quite a significant new change and new requirement when it comes to UK immigration. So the ETA was actually rolled out first as far back as November 2023 with some Middle Eastern and Gulf countries, so Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Bahrain, Kuwait, and UAE. The second phase, which then took place, and I suppose that the biggest change took, in terms of the implementation and rollout, was on the 8th of January this year. As you can see, we've set out all the countries and all the nationalities that now need to apply for an ETA. Some ones just to flag there quite significantly, obviously the US. We also have Singapore, Australia as well, and New Zealand. So nationals of these countries will now need to apply for an ETA. Some African countries as well, although the majority still need to apply for a visit visa. We have, as you can see, highlighted Colombia. It had initially been listed as a country where nationals could apply for an ETA. Sam, am I correct in saying they will now need to apply for a visit visa and they're no longer eligible for the ETA?
That's correct. Yeah. So just on that point, guys, Colombia last November, December time, the Home Office decided to remove Colombian nationals or Colombia from the non-visa national list. They decided that you can no longer, as a Colombian national, enter the UK visa-free for 6 months for short stays. You will instead have to apply for and at least obtain a visit visa or any other permission. So just sort of flagging here how the Home Office are constantly reviewing this list. And there is always the possibility in the future that countries are taken off this list and have to apply for visit visa again, but countries could also be added. It's under constant review, and that's sort of our job here at Centuro, is keeping up to date with these statement of changes and making sure that you guys are sort of well informed in advance of these changes taking place.
Absolutely. Just to quickly go back, Charlotte asked about Taiwan-based employees on the assumption that they are Taiwanese. Taiwan, Charlotte is on that list, so they would be eligible. Some other key countries there, you've got Israel, Japan, and a number of other kind of quite significant countries, Mexico as well, Brazil and Canada. So nationals of these countries will need to apply for the ETA. I don't see India there. I know that some of our clients do have a number of Indian nationals. They would need a visit visa. Is that correct, Sam?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is important to review that list and constantly check it, as Sam said. It will evolve and change as time goes by. If we move on to the next slide, then, Sam.
Perfect.
This is really quite significant. So, as of the 2nd of April this year, although nationals can apply from the 5th of March, all EU and EEA and Swiss nationals will also need to apply for an ETA. That's obviously quite significant. It also, in a way, potentially mirrors the timeline for ETIAS implementation as well, because UK nationals will need to apply for an ETIAS. We may have a separate webinar on that later in the year. But as you can see, these nationals from all EU countries will also need to apply for an ETA. They will not be able to enter the UK without having done so in advance. So it is really important, if you do have employees of any of these nationalities or from the previous slide, that you are aware that they would need to get this travel authorization prior to entry into the United Kingdom. So, Sam, if you could take over in terms of the next slide.
Perfect. No, thank you, Ben. Now we're just going to go over a few case studies, guys, that we've obviously come up with our side, but these are ones that we see our clients sort of dealing with, and it's sort of based on the future adoption or the future implementation for EU nationals and EEA nationals. So, sort of design these case studies for potential situations that you or your clients may be faced with. So, the first one we've got Sam. Good name, I guess. Sam is a Norwegian national. He is currently employed for a large multinational company in Norway. The company he works for is sending Sam to the London, UK office for 2 weeks to attend business meetings and attend a trade fair. So currently, as a Norwegian national, Sam does not require permission to travel to the UK for short trips, including for these reasons related, so business reasons or attending a trade fair, etc. However, from the 2nd of April 2025, as a Norwegian national, Sam will be required to obtain an ETA to travel to the UK for short trips. He must ensure that he has the ETA in place before entering the UK. In addition to that, we've then got Ben. So Ben is an Andorran national, currently based in Dublin, Ireland, with a valid Irish residency permit. He is looking to travel to the UK across the Northern Ireland land border for a period of around 1 month, so a short stay. Currently, as an Andorran national, Ben does not require permission to travel to the UK for these short trips. However, from the 2nd of April 2025, this is still the case. As an Andorran national within the Common Travel Area, Ben will not require an ETA to travel to the UK. And the reason is that he is a resident of the Republic of Ireland and he's traveling directly from within the Common Travel Area to the UK. So because he's got Irish residency and he's traveling directly to the UK, he won't need an ETA for that travel. He must instead demonstrate acceptable proof of his Irish residency status. So this could be an Irish residency permit, visa, etc., at the border. We also have Nicole. So Nicole, she is a French national who is long-term based in Ireland, but is currently back in France visiting family. So Nicole is planning to fly directly from France to the UK in May of this year for a business trip with her current employer before returning to Ireland for the summer. So currently, as a French national, Nicole does not require permission to travel to the UK for short trips. However, from the 2nd of April of this year, she will be required to obtain an ETA for this trip. The reason being is that as a French national traveling to the UK from outside of the Common Travel Area, so she's traveling directly from France to the UK, Nicole shall require an ETA to be able to visit the UK for these short trips. So it's very important that when you get situations like this, you're able to make the distinction between if they have Irish residency, are they traveling directly from Ireland or directly from within the Common Travel Area, or are they traveling to the UK from outside of that jurisdiction? So just a sort of final point from us on this, we've got a little bit about a new piece of news that you may or probably have been aware of. It's about individuals transiting through the UK. So recently, the Home Office, following feedback from the UK's aviation industry, they have agreed a temporary exemption from passengers who transit to or through the UK airside and therefore do not pass through UK border control. So if this is the case, if you're transiting through the UK airside and don't pass the UK border on that transit, you will not need an ETA currently to transit through the UK. However, if you are crossing through the UK border as part of this transit, you will continue to require an ETA if you are a nationality in which that is applicable. It is important to state here, though, that it is only a temporary exemption. It is being kept under constant review, and it is possible that in the future this exemption is removed. Alternatively, it is possible that this exemption is extended. We don't know. The Home Office will keep that under review, and we will be sure to keep you guys informed when we do hear an update from them on that. So that's been the sort of ETA presentation. I hope that's provided a lot of well-rounded sort of advice on what the Electronic Travel Authorisation scheme is, how we can see it evolve, and we'll sort of move on to any questions you guys may have.
Thank you, Sam. That was really, really helpful and informative. Really interesting slides as well. So appreciate giving us that update. We do have a number of questions, which is great. Please do keep them coming as we address the ones that have come through already. I will start with one obvious question, I suppose. What happens if Ben, as from a case study, is eligible for an ETA? I apply, and then the application is rejected. What do I do then? Can I apply again? Do I have to think about another route? What your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and basically, if your ETA application is rejected, I mean, you have the possibility to apply again. However, as part of that rejection, you will be provided reasoning as to why the application was rejected. So, we wouldn't be able to say what the reasons would be now, but there would be a justification from the Home Office as to why they rejected your ETA. Now, you can, if your application was rejected, apply for a visitor visa. So if you are, let's say, a US national, as an example, and your ETA application was rejected, you could always apply for a UK visitor visa. However, I would just avert caution on this, because if the Home Office have rejected your ETA application, there would be a justification behind it. There would be a good reason as to why they've rejected it. So if you didn't act on those reasons behind that, and you just immediately went to apply for a visitor visa, there is a high chance that the Home Office would just reject that visitor visa as well. So it's very important to make sure that if the application was rejected, you work on why it has been, or you argue against that. You don't just go in and file straight away for a visitor visa application, because the outcome is very likely to be the same.
Okay, that's really helpful, Sam. How long is the application processing time for an ETA?
Yeah, so the Home Office advised that the processing time can be between 2 to 3 working days. So it's very similar to a US ESTA application in that regard. However, again, we just have to caveat that with the fact that it can take longer if necessary. It is with the Home Office to decide your application. They have the right to take as long as they feel necessary to approve it. But as Ben said, it can also come in quicker than that. We have seen applications come in just a few hours. It doesn't need to take 3 working days, but we advise that the 2 to 3 working days is used as a guideline.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, working in this industry, one of the important things is managing client expectations. So to give the official processing time, it is a few days. That being said, my sister-in-law applied for an ETA, took her 20 minutes or so. So it's always best to err on the side of caution, as Sam mentioned. Let's crack on through the questions then. Ravid has asked if someone can apply on behalf of an individual. Sam, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so this is obviously a possibility that you can apply on behalf of the individual, but I would just state that it is quite a simple and straightforward process. So it would sort of probably work better if the individual was there, because you need their passport with them at the time. But again, it is of course possible to apply on their behalf. But from my perspective, it's better just to provide the instructions to the individual on how to do it, and they can go away and quickly fill it out in 10 or 15 minutes.
Sure. Question from Lucy. There was also a question on transit visas, which I think we may have addressed during the presentation. But Lucy's asked, is the ETA needed for US citizens who enter Ireland and travel to Northern Ireland? It's an interesting one.
Yes, it's an interesting one. And Lucy, I think, hi, by the way. Basically, if you are in Ireland and traveling to the UK from Ireland, you need to have Irish residency. So you need to demonstrate that you have sufficient proof of Irish residency. So you need like an Irish working visa, residency visa, residency permit, etc. If you're just traveling to Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, as like a tourist, and then traveling on to the UK, that would not be sort of seen as acceptable proof of Irish residency because you're only there for a temporary visit. So you would still need an ETA in that instance to come to the UK. It's only for those individuals who have Irish residency.
And just to be specific, Sam, she mentioned Northern Ireland, in which case an ETA is required. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah, because Northern Ireland is still considered part of the United Kingdom. So that it would be the same Scotland, Northern Ireland, England or Wales, would all be the same situation.
Yeah, of course. Really interesting question from Nazmul. If countries were removed, but the individual already has an ETA, would this continue to be valid until its expiry?
Yes, it's a very good question, Nasmal. From our understanding, I don't think the Home Office have actually put out that much guidance on this because I think there hasn't really been this situation that's happened yet. The only one we talked about was Colombia, but Colombia was removed from that list before the 8th of, I think it was the 8th of Jan 2025. So technically, the Home Office were never in that sort of situation. Now, I don't think that because they haven't encountered it, they haven't put much guidance out about it. But from our understanding, if you had an ETA as a, let's say, Colombian national, for example, and you applied for this back in November of last year when you could apply, and now they're off the list, you wouldn't be able to enter on the ETA because the guidance now says you need at least a visit visa to travel to the UK. That supersedes anything about the electronic travel authorization. So unfortunately, you would have paid money for the ETA, which is no longer applicable. You would instead need to go and obtain additional permission, could be in the form of a visit visa or, a working visa, etc.
Great, thanks, Sam. Another really interesting one. If someone has a pre-settled status in the UK, do they need an ETA when traveling into the UK from the relevant European country?
It's a good question again. If you've got pre-settled status, this is sort of UK, it's permission to enter the UK. So anything like pre-settled status, visitor visas, skilled worker permission, anything like that, anything where you have permission to enter the UK, that supersedes an electronic travel authorization. So you would travel back on the pre-settled status because you have permission to enter the UK on that, you would not need an electronic travel authorization.
Okay, that's very clear. A question from Birgit. If you travel to the UK by car, e.g. the Eurotunnel, I guess an ETA is still needed. I'm guessing the answer is yes, Sam.
That's correct. Yeah, any method of entering the UK, whether that's airborne, whether that's on a ferry, through the Eurotunnel, or the Northern Ireland border, for example, by car, you will need to present an ETA before you enter.
Okay, perfect. What if a person has an Irish visa or either a work or a residence permit? Could they not travel to the UK directly from their home country, or would they need an ETA? This goes back to the CTA slide. So, what are your thoughts?
Yes, no, it's a good question again, and I know there's going to be a lot of complications regarding that. But if an individual has an Irish, let's say a work visa in this permit, in this case, sorry, or residence permit, they would need to travel to the UK from Ireland. So directly from Ireland, they would need to be physically present in Ireland before they travel to the UK. If they went back to their home country and then traveled to the UK from there, they would need an ETA if applicable, and if their nationality is affected, because they're not traveling directly from Ireland. So the Irish residency only sort of plays into effect if you are traveling directly from the Republic of Ireland to the UK.
Interesting. Okay. More specific question about the application form. I mean, it's hard for you to give us a full kind of line by line question, but what are the sorts of questions that are being asked in an ETA application? Is there anything quite intrinsic or private, anything to do with medical or criminal histories that you think should be flagged at all?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. When it comes to the ETA application, if anyone on the call has done an ESTA application to the US before, I know I keep bringing up the ESTA, but it is quite a similar form to that, albeit a bit less complicated and a bit less long. It's a lot of personal information, so your name, date of birth, etc., your passport information, residency information, etc. But again, the forms change all the time. So there is the possibility that before the new implementation for EU, EEA, Swiss nationals, the form changes again, or the Home Office find something else that they need to ask, other questions they need to ask. So we wouldn't be able to give a direct answer on that. It's sort of an ongoing process.
Yeah, I mean, as with any country, Sam, the authorities have the discretion to change the questions as well, and that's something to
Yeah.
be aware of. Sometimes they slip in new questions. I know for ESTAs and other types of application forms globally, that those forms can change really at any point. So it's hard to give our audience a line by line or detailed list of questions. Obviously, we can set that out now in terms of what the questions are, but again, they can change quite rapidly in terms of what is being asked. But they can go into quite a lot of detail in terms of travel history and that sort of thing. And it's important to also be genuine and transparent in your response as well. This appears to be our last question, unless anything comes in the next couple of minutes. But Charlotte has asked us on the eta.gov.uk website. It says you come to the UK. You can come to the UK for up to 6 months for tourism, business travel, etc. Could the duration be less depending on what factors, or depending on any factors?
So, from my understanding, no. So, as a national who has to obtain an ETA, you have, once you get that ETA, you have permission to enter the UK for those short stays. So, up to 6 months at any one time. But that ETA is valid for 2 years. So, the ETA, it wouldn't be tied to any timing or anything like that, aside from the 2 years. So, you wouldn't get the ETA and it would say, we can now grant you permission for for your travel to the UK for the next month, right? It would be you've been granted an ETA, you've got permission to enter the UK for short stays for the next 2 years, and then once that expires, you do it again. So you can enter the UK for those short stays, and when we talk about short stays for tourism, business travel, etc., you must be sure that you remain within the sort of confines of what is stipulated under those categories, right? You can't come to the UK to do paid work, for example. You can't come to the UK to study for more than 6 months, etc. You have to make sure that you're coming in for a reason that's permitted under that sort of visitor guidance.
Great. Thanks so much, Sam. I know that a few more questions have come in whilst we've addressed this last one, but we are at time now. So, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone who has taken the time to join us today for this conversation. It's been very fruitful and fascinating to have you interact and ask these questions and comment, and also have people from quite literally all corners of the globe join us. So, thank you so much. Thank you to Nicole, who has helped in the background to prepare the webinar and set us up and organize us. Thank you to Sam for your fascinating slides and informative conversation, and making me feel like Clive Myrie in an episode of Mastermind because of the grilling that I've given you. Appreciate that. And really enjoy the conversation. We're going to be having some more discussions like these. We will follow up with any individuals that have had questions and we haven't gone back to them. But in the meantime, thanks so much for everyone who has been a part of this webinar. And we're really looking forward to the next conversation. So great. Thanks very much, and speak to you all. See you all soon. Take care.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.